Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wealthy Sailor. I thought we'd try out a different intro today. So, back in 2015, I was the command financial specialist while I was in the Navy, and I had a younger sailor come up to me, and she basically had the problem where she was worried about her security clearance. Now, for those of you who don't know, every 10 years, if you hold a security clearance in the military, you have to have it renewed. When that time comes up, they basically do a background check on you. They make you fill out a questionnaire, and one of the things they check is your credit report. The concern is that if you hold too much debt, or if you're delinquent on your debt, then it's possible that a foreign agent or whatever could actually give you money and pay you for information. Like, you're more susceptible to that. Which I would argue that if they're in a lot of debt, they care less about having wealth than a normal person, but whatever, that's the concern. So they check your credit. So she basically goes on to tell me that she has some delinquencies, which is a big no-no in the military. They really do a lot to make sure you're not actually delinquent on anything. It's one thing to have a lot of credit card debt or a lot of loans, but you have to be paying your bills. Um, so she tells me about it, and she said she didn't know how much it is or how many, but she was in a relationship with a boyfriend. They co-signed each other's stuff, and she had some cell phones with him with two different companies, and he went delinquent on both of them, but she was stuck with the charges. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not completely abnormal for younger people, who are in new relationships. Like, I know many friends that never joined the military who did a lot of stuff like that. So I commandeer an office, and we start going through her credit report. We go to annualcreditreport.com, and then we also get her a account with Credit Karma, and we start going through it. And she has 3 delinquencies. So it's not the worst thing, but it's pretty bad. Her credit score was very low. I want to say it was high 500s, but I don't remember exactly. It might have been mid 500s. So the first delinquency she had on there was her previous internet and cable provider, which she owed $284 to, and that includes the initial fee, the initial amount plus fees that have accrued since then. It had since been sold to a debt collector. So while we're in my office, I pull up her credit report and I get the numbers of the debt collector, and we just call. Now, we had a little bit of an advantage. She just got her tax return back, which was about $1,500. So looking over everything, we're like, well, we can probably pay off just about everything with that amount. So that was the goal. So next, she had a cell phone company, which was $530. Another cell phone company, which was $140, and she had a gym membership that I guess they only had 1 month on there because it wasn't set to debt collection yet. They were holding it, but it was only $12. Besides that, she had 2 stored credit cards, one for $300 and one for $500. So now it became the fun part. We had to call each one of these people, or well, the debt services or the billing departments, and try to negotiate a way of paying this. So the first call was to a debt collector handling the bill for the internet service provider. Her original bill was $110. She ended up owing $284 with fees, like all the late fees and stuff like that. So obviously I didn't want her to pay $284. I think that's just too much. And she was also delinquent on here for almost 4 years on this one bill. So I'm on the phone with them, and I'm trying to find out what the lowest they're going to go down to is. The original amount was $110, so I want something around the $110 range, but I wasn't going to start with $110. So I said we would be able to give $50 right now to clear it. We bounced around a little bit, and eventually they basically kept saying they couldn't go down any lower, they couldn't go down any lower. So, we just, okay, fine. We will talk to you later then. And we just hung up. So we went ahead and we just called the next company, which was cell phone number 1. The original bill was $480. It ballooned up to $530 with the fees. So we went back and forth a little bit, and basically I went with $100. And like, we'll give you $100. They went from $530 down to $500, and we're like, no. But they pretty much quickly realized that they've had this delinquency or this debt on their books for 3 years. So we got them down to $200 and closed it. So we were feeling pretty good about that. We're like, okay, $200 settlement. That's not bad at all. Next one was cell phone company number 2. $63 originally. $140 with the fees and stuff and all the late stuff. Um, Same thing. We started really low. I said I'd give them $25. Luckily, her total amount wasn't very much, so they were able to go down. We got them down to $45. So we're like, yes. Now, after the cell phone company 2 called, before we called the gym, the cable company called us back. I guess, so we called on my cell phone, and I guess they saved the number. So the collector's like, okay, well, we got special permission to go down $100 from my manager. And we're like, nah, we'll give you $50. And it was funny because it was a guy on the phone, and you could just hear this like deep exhale, like, all right, $55. And we're like, sold. So we sold that for $55. And then the last was the gym. Now, the gym didn't sell the debt off to any debt collectors. They just held it themselves, which makes sense kind of, because the thing is that I don't know who's aware of this or not, but when you owe money to somebody, you first go through a grace period usually. So usually nothing will happen for the first like 30 days. You might have a late payment, but it won't affect your credit. That's how it was with my mortgage. I was actually late on it once. And I have a 14-day grace period with them. After that, that's when the late thing starts. So usually it's not until about 120 days to about 6 months where they start sending it to collections and then debt companies and stuff like that. The reason being is that they still want you to pay your bill. Like, they don't want to have to sell it, because let's say you owe $100. They're going to sell your debt to a debt collection agency for like pennies on the dollar. You're talking about maybe selling a $100 debt for $5. Now a debt collection agency has it, which means if they get the original amount of $100, or especially all their fees and stuff, they just made so much profit off of it. So back to the gym, we called them up and we just paid them, and they were even nice enough to pull the delinquency from her credit report. Although I do want to tell you, it took about 6 months for this to actually get withdrawn from her credit report. And considering the other delinquencies, it really didn't matter. Now, this brings me to my next topic. When you're doing this, if you're trying to negotiate lower terms or lower costs of delinquencies with debt collectors, sometimes you can negotiate with them and have them remove the delinquency from your credit report. We weren't able to do it with the first 3. They honestly just didn't care. It wasn't part of it. But you can do that. You can try. I'm not sure how that would work. The gym still owned the debt, so they seemed pretty willing to help us. But once it goes to the debt collector, I don't think they really care about your credit report all that much, or at least that was my impression. So another thing you can do that I haven't tried, so I have no first-hand experience, if you have tried it and this has worked, please let me know. But you can mark a delinquency as an error. This forces the credit agency to then contact whoever holds your debt and then make sure it's all correct. Now, you're hoping for one of two things. You're hoping for one, that there's actually an error. Now, what they will do is, like, if dates are wrong or if the amount's wrong or whatever, they can actually pull the entire delinquency off your credit report. I find that to be unlikely. When we were going through this particular sailor's credit report, we didn't find any errors that we were able to identify. But here's the other thing. If it belongs to a debt collector, it forces the debt collector to then send all that information to the credit bureau. Now, what I've heard from insiders with with debt collectors is that once they have their money, they don't care about you anymore. There's basically no financial incentive for them to help the credit reporting agency. So if they fail to send the information to the credit reporting agency, they then have to pull the delinquency completely off. We did not actually attempt this because it's not something I heard about until years later, and I really feel like I did the sailor a disservice by not knowing this particular strategy. Kind of wish I did. I didn't, unfortunately, so, live and learn. Okay, so for all the totals, she had $665 worth of initial bills, which ballooned up to $966 with all the fees, with 3 of the accounts in collections. We settled all of the accounts for $312. All done. She said that was one of the happiest days of her life because she no longer had to avoid answering the phone, and Another thing she had, and this is just kind of a side thing, is that apparently they were calling like her parents to try to find her, because what they basically do is when a new debt collector buys the debt, then they just do a background check on you. You know, a background check on you costs $10, and then they basically call every number, try to contact every address that they find on there. So she could finally tell her parents not to worry. They don't have to lie and say she's not around anymore. All the debts were taken care of. Okay, so finally our two store credit cards, one with $300, one with $500. They were not delinquent. She was just making minimum payments on us, so we paid both of them off for $800. So that means for the low payment of $1,112, she was officially debt-free for the first time in her adult life. And she really liked the feeling of it, and I don't blame her. I mean, that's an incredible feeling. Unfortunately, it takes a very long time for this stuff to drop off. She had 3 delinquencies on there. And some people seem to believe that if you don't pay something, after 7 years it goes away. And I want to make it very clear that's not how it works. After the delinquency is resolved, it takes 7 years to go away. Unless you declare bankruptcy. Sometimes bankruptcies, depending on what kind, take 10 years to go away. So just know that that timer for 7 years that everybody hears about, that starts once it's resolved, not when it's an open account. Okay, so if anybody watched this and it sounds familiar, it's something that you're going through or a friend's going through, I just want to explain why you should take care of this sooner rather than later. One, I'm a big fan of having good credit. As I made a previous video, I recently went up to 800 points. Woo! It's impressive for me, okay? I'm happy. Don't judge me. The thing is that by having good credit, you have a safety net. If something happens, you have at least the credit available to be able to compensate for it. If your car suddenly breaks down and is not repairable, you could theoretically buy a new car. If you had to do a major appliance purchase, you can take out a loan to do that. You can do home equity loans, whatever, but having good credit is the key to a lot of that. 2, I'm a big fan of people doing what they say they're going to do. If you borrow money or you say you're going to pay something, then pay your bills. I mean, like, as somebody who gets involved in business, and for any of you who like to invest, understand that in a small way affects the stock price of these companies. You know, like if you invest in like JP Morgan Chase, they make a lot of money off their credit card, so going delinquent on them affects the stock price. So please don't lower my investments because you're not paying your bills. And 3, the longer this goes on, the more expensive it becomes. They can add more late fees on there, and they can just keep letting it snowball. So your refusal to fix it will actually make things worse. Now, there is a slight benefit to this. Now, in this case, this sailor was able to pay off all of her stuff at once with her tax return, which was a smart move. But you don't have to do that. You'll be surprised what you can accomplish just by calling and opening up a dialogue with them. You can make small payments, because what you could do is be like, look, I can't afford it if you keep adding fees on there, but for the current price or maybe a smaller negotiated price, I can pay that off. Can we work that out? They just want their money, or any money at this point, especially if you let it go for years. So I would suggest at least calling them and starting to talk about it. If nothing else, if you start making payments on it then perhaps, even if it takes you a year to get paid off completely, perhaps you can negotiate in there that it stops showing up as delinquency on your credit report, so that now it's considered somewhat resolved, and it's just like a regular bill that you're paying along. Now you still have that delinquency, but that 1 year while you're paying it off goes into that 7 years of you waiting for your credit to get repaired. Also, keep in mind that as this stuff gets older, it counts less and less. So for example, a delinquency you have yesterday is a lot more damaging than a delinquency you had 5 years ago, even though the 5-year delinquency still shows up on your credit report. So keep that in mind. And the last thing I want to talk about is companies that offer to fix your credit for you. Now, what I just explained to you is pretty much what most of these companies do on your behalf, except they take money in order to do it. They send the letters out, they dispute everything and stuff like that. I don't think it's a bad investment, but I don't want you to think that you can't do it either. In fact, these systems are set up, there's a lot of laws to make it easier for you as a consumer to fight stuff on your credit report. It's not foolproof, but it helps. And basically, when you go to these credit fixing agencies, they basically call and negotiate on your behalf, and then they do the same thing that I described doing. Now, they might be more effective than the way I can do it, or whatever you can do, but they're going to take a fee for doing it. So take it for what it's worth. I have never used one firsthand, so I can't give you a real representation on how they work. But just be careful. I don't really think it's a good idea if you're already in debt to then spend money to fix it. But it could be a good plan for you depending on what your situation is. Anyway, guys, thank you for stopping by to the Wealthy Sailor. I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a like, a subscribe, whatever. We just got word that there's a sandstorm coming in, so I got it going. So see ya. Be safe and keep saving.